Hi everyone, this is Bill Straub. I'm the editor of ModernThirst.com, and I have a quick video review for you of David Nicholson Reserve Bourbon. If you're not familiar with David Nicholson Reserve or the David Nicholson line in general, don't feel bad about it. It's not the most widely marketed or most widely distributed bourbon in the world, but it's produced by Luxco, who's a fairly well-known producer. And Luxco, until recently, has been a non-distilling producer, which means that this is a sourced bourbon. They do buy this from someone else. But the brand itself, David Nicholson, has been around since 1843, according to the stories, where a grocer in St. Louis, which is the home of Luxco, apparently either made this or sourced and blended it in the back of his grocery store in 1843. At one point, the David Nicholson name was owned by the Van Winkle family and produced at Stitzel Weller, so it is a wheated bourbon, the 1843. This, however, is a newer offering. It's the Reserve. It's 100 proof, and it is a rye bourbon. As to where this is actually made today, it's a little bit of a mystery, although we do know that the Lux family, who owns Luxco, and the Shapira family, who owns Heaven Hill, are very close and have been for several generations. So there's a very good chance that this is actually made by Heaven Hill. If that's the case, this is probably their standard bourbon mash bill, which is about 78% corn, 10% rye, and 12% malted barley. I haven't actually tried this until just a few moments ago when I had my first taste of it. But this retails for right around $30 to $35. It shouldn't be that hard to find, at least in the areas around Kentucky, Missouri, Ohio, Illinois, places like that. So let's give this a taste and we'll see how it checks out. So there's a little bit of nuttiness on the nose of this, maybe some peanuts and cashews, and that is kind of a trademark Heaven Hill note on the nose. But by and large, what I get the most of is really kind of a sweet, light vanilla scent, which I don't get in a lot of Heaven Hill offerings, and that's simply because I usually get an awful lot of oak and barrel tannins out of Heaven Hill that I'm not really getting in this. There's a little bit of oak on the tail end, reminds me of some of the sourced Heaven Hill offerings that are aged elsewhere, so maybe that oak tannin is their filtering process or the aging process kind of endemic to that with Heaven Hill products. But I get a little bit of butterscotch and some other sweetness to it as well. All in all, it's fairly sweet smelling. As far as appearance goes, it's definitely a medium brown. There's a little bit of amber hints to it. So it doesn't appear to be overly young, and I don't get a lot of ethanol on the nose saying that it's very young. The bottle itself is not age stated. It doesn't say bottled in bond, even though it's 100 proof, so there's no telling what the actual age of this is. Based on the nose, I would guess that it's not particularly young. It's probably also not 10 years old, obviously. So let's give it a taste and see how it does on the palate. Yeah, so the nuttiness carries through, and that's definitely a Heaven Hill trait. So I'd say there's a good chance that this was sourced from Heaven Hill. I don't get a lot of the oak and barrel tannins on this, though, so I would say that it was probably purchased by Luxco, probably initially when it was distilled and aged elsewhere. There's a lot of vanilla on the palate here. Some simple syrup and maybe a little bit of maple syrup on there. Yeah, it's not overly complex. It's not overly deep. There is a good mouthfeel to it, a good texture. It's fairly creamy. And the finish, I would say, is probably on the somewhat long side. And that's because I think the rye kind of plays the prominent role on the finish. It's a little bit of peppery, a little bit of spiciness. And that's really the dominant flavor. There's a little bit of oak on there, so there is some age to it. I would probably put this in a 4 to 6 year old range. It does not have the charcoal forward kind of and barrel forward flavoring that you get from most Heaven Hill branded or Evan Williams branded products, but it does have enough age to it to take some of the bite, I guess you would say, or the youth off of the whiskey. All in all, I would say it's pretty tasty. It's certainly not a bold and overly complex whiskey, but if you like a rye spice, which I do, I prefer a rye whiskey over a wheater. I would say this is a very nice $30 to $35 bottle. I wouldn't go too much over that, maybe 40 if if I really had a craving for this, although I think there are other rye forward profile whiskeys you can get in that price range, namely Four Roses. But all in all, I'd say this is pretty good. On the Modern Thirst scale, this is probably going to come in around an 87 to 88 points out of 100. When you read this on the site, I'll have the final score posted at ModernThirst.com. So feel free to check that out and check out our other reviews. We have over 200 whiskeys reviewed on the site. We're adding more all the time. We're actually adding new writers to cover more whiskey and beer. And if you like what we do, please consider supporting us on patreon.com/modernthirst. If you could pledge even $1, $2 a month, that would be great. If not, we hope you really enjoy what we do. We're going to try to add more videos as time goes on because we feel like this is kind of a medium we haven't really explored enough to date. But it's something our readers have asked a lot more of. So we'll try to bring more of these and more of our regular video casts as well. But thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this, and cheers.